And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I am the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage. And today we are thankful that you're joining us on the podcast, Leveraging Thought Leadership with Adam Witty. Say hello, Adam.
Peter, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. Thank you for being here. So let me just tell everybody who Adam is, because I've known Adam for quite some time. Adam is the founder and chief executive officer of Advantage/ForbesBooks. He's built Advantage Media Group. He is a hardcore entrepreneur. He's been on all the cool lists: Inc. 5000, 2011 Inc. Magazine 30 Under 30, YPO 40 Under 40. I guess there's 50 Under 50 would be coming if we follow the logic there. He's passionate about entrepreneurship. He's passionate about publishing. And he has an interesting vantage point into this sort of wacky and crazy world of content and thought leadership from a business perspective. So I really appreciate you coming down here and spending time with us today, Adam. And I'm sure you're going to add some insights into the conversation.
Well, you're right. I've had a front row seat. We've now worked with over 1,300 CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners to help them create their content and then leverage their content to make money, to grow their business. And most of what the mass media says about content marketing and how to leverage content is wrong. And, listening to people like you is the right thing, because you actually help your clients make money with their expertise. And you and I have the same passion, which is just that.
Yeah, and we're sort of old school, I think, you and I. I mean, I guess two relatively young guys. I'll add you in the mix to average it out and bring the average down a little bit. But it's really about the business side of content, right? Because a lot of the mumbo jumbo and stuff that we hear from PR people about doing AM radio tours or things that don't make sense. I mean, you and I are always putting a pencil to things. So let's sort of dive into it. Tell me what you're seeing that's really interesting and that what's working either for you and or on behalf of your clients relative to getting content out there in a way that is logical and profitable from a financial perspective.
Yeah, so if I back up for just a second, I'll say that you and I are completely aligned on this idea that when you are seen as an authority, when you are seen as an expert, when you are seen as the thought leader on your topic, in your niche, it gives you a remarkable competitive advantage in the marketplace. And we've always been advocates that authority and expertise and thought leadership is not bestowed upon you. It doesn't just magically happen overnight, but it's something where you have to strategically build a plan and then systematically work that plan to actually create it. And those people that don't have a plan and don't work the plan, the results they get are inconsistent at best.
So is this the point where you're going to tell me that it's not luck or charisma or a client's charm, but it actually takes hard work, effort, thoughtfulness, planning, budgeting, and all those things?
I hate to break the news, but yes. And I mean, look, you and I both know that the clients that you have and the clients that we have that have had the most success, it's not an overnight success story. It's not a silver bullet, but it's something that has been building over time, that you've just been chipping away at, brick by brick, stone by stone. And, most things in life that are of significance, success comes that same way. Content marketing and leveraging thought leadership, at least in our experience working with now 1,300 people, is very much the same.
So let me ask you this, because I this is something I find fascinating, is that most thought leaders that I work with, right, and probably a good chunk that you work with as well, they didn't plan to be where they are, right? There is no MBA in thought leadership. There is no sort of linear or typical career trajectory that says do this, 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 and this, right? So if you want to be an accountant, there's things you do. If you want to be a doctor, there's things you do. Lawyer, there's things you do. Oftentimes what I find are people wake up and it's sort of, how did I get here, right? So they're passionate about something, they write an article, maybe they give a keynote, and all this sort of things happen that weren't planned, and voila, now they're a thought leader. And I always force them to pause and say, wait a minute, hold on. Stop thinking of yourself as a speaker or an author, because it's rare that either of those things independently will be what you actually do for a living, right? But you're in the content space. You're in the thought leadership business. and there's about 20 ways to monetize that. Now let's be thoughtful and plan it out, right? As if you were opening, a simple coffee shop or pizza place in your local market, you would want to think about margins. You'd want to think about your brand. You'd want to think about the competition. But a lot of people sort of skip business 101 when it comes to sort of making that leap, both financially and personally and emotionally into the content space. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, passion overtakes them. So let's use the example of a book, because it's something I know a lot about. A lot of people, they have stories, they have passion, they have knowledge. They get wrapped up around that. And somebody says to them, you should write a book. I can't tell you how many people that I've worked with, their impetus to reach out and find us was, everybody's told me I should write a book.
So wait, it's not true that publishers like yourself and others are planting people at cocktail parties to tell that to people from a marketing perspective? That's not true?
Negative.
Okay.
But so they're so passionate about this, right? They're so wrapped up in this, they just plunge forward without essentially a business plan. I mean, you and I, we are adamant about every thought leader, everyone that's going to utilize thought leadership and content to accomplish something needs the equivalent of a business plan. The large majority of people don't do that. They just follow their passion. And that's why 9 out of 10 people that write a book never make any money from the book, but more importantly, never make any money from the whole activity set that's centered around the book.
And if you said to those same people, I'd like you to invest 50, 100, whatever the number is, $1,000, and 6 months of your time into this project, and you didn't say it was content or thought leadership, they would ask all the right questions. What's the ROI? What's expected of me? How does this, relate to my skill sets? What's the team I need to build? So it's when you change that word sort of book, author, speaker for invest in a real estate deal or a business or whatever the case may be, they have the tools. They're just not applying them in the scenario.
Well, yeah, they're business people. This is what they do day in and day out. And you're right. In this one instance, as if all of their education, all of their basis of logic, all of the processes that they've known and followed in all other aspects of their business, it's as if it all goes out the window and it all becomes a big passion project.
So what should they do, Adam, and when should they do it?
Well, so the first thing for us is always, okay, let's start with, your why. So, why is it that you are doing this? And the truth is, not everybody is there a money or business motivation. I mean, there are people where literally a book or content is a bucket list item, it is a passion item, and they have enough financial resources through other things that whether it bleeds money or not is of no consequence to them.
Right. It's legacy, or it's something they're just intrinsically fascinated with, or it's one of the reasons they were put on the planet. So that there's nothing wrong with that, as you say.
Yeah. Now let's be clear. That's the exception.
Right. 5%, 3%, right?
Yeah. That's not the large majority of people. So for the rest of us, what we always stop and say is, okay, well, what's your why? Why is it that you're doing this? And in, I'd say 8 out of 10 cases, the why is, I want to use this to grow my business. And in most cases, this is their primary business. So their primary business could be, they're a financial advisor, they're a orthodontist, they own a, $10 million a year manufacturing company, they're in the hospitality industry, a wide variety of industries. So what's the why? And usually it's, I want to promote my primary business.
So it's a competitive advantage. It gives them a positioning in the marketplace. So these were what I would call sort of professionals using a book to differentiate in the marketplace, right? And show that there's domain expertise. It might not have to be at a global scale, but the reason I'm a really good, divorce attorney or architect or whatever the case may be is the following. And by the way, I wrote the book.
Exactly. There's so much noise in most industries. The typical corporate marketing, the brand marketing, it gets lost. And especially if you're not a huge company with a big marketing budget, you've got to play a game that the large majority of your competitors are not playing. And that's where, we call it authority marketing. You call it, thought leadership marketing, which are largely the same thing. That's where this can really pan out for them and produce some pretty big dividends and results. So begin with the why. Why is it that you're doing this? And then once we really drill down on the why, then we say, okay, what's the plan? And the plan for us is, okay, what pillars of authority marketing do you need to build into your plan? And so for, of course, most of the people that we work with, it starts with a book. Okay, so they're going to write the book on the topic. Now that they have this book, how are they going to leverage the book? They're going to leverage the book for PR and media. Now, you and I both know pursuing PR and media because you think you're going to get customers who see you on a radio show or a television show or see you in the newspaper, that's largely not going to happen. But the credibility of as seen on, as heard on, as appeared in is significant. And when you're David and you're competing with Goliath, all of these extra authority attributes that we can link to you and your business can help give you a bit more of a leg up. So we start with the why, we then build the plan of how we're going to systematically and strategically create authority. And then once that plan is agreed on by both parties, the author and us Advantage ForbesBooks, then we get to work. And typically the first phase of a plan for most of the people we work with is anywhere from 12 to 15 months.
Got it. So what's a couple of critical things that you sort of sprinkled in there that I find really interesting is it's got to be before, because the hardest calls I get and the difficult situations that I deal with from a client perspective is, the call that says, hey, my book's coming out in 4 weeks, and I finally got out from under the hecticness of it, and now I want to think about how to make it successful. Is it impossible? No. Is it is it like completing a marathon without ever training? Yes. Right. Doable, not recommended. So that's one. The other things that you said is strategically, and I think you said methodically, right? So it is not left to luck and circumstance and whatever. And, by the way, if Oprah calls, go do the show, that's all fine and dandy, but you have to control your own destiny. You have to figure out what does success look like and be realistic. Like you said, I think people are, their expectations need to be recalibrated. So even if you're lucky enough to get a good media hit, Wall Street Journal, CNN, Forbes, obviously, that doesn't mean that immediately the game has changed for you and the phones are ringing off the hook. It's yet another differentiator in a marketplace that is being commoditized. So I love the fact that you're doing that early. The book is a core piece of that. What else would you say?
Well, I would say something that you just said. So many authors, the people you have around you who are largely your friends and your family, what you've got to remember is that they tell you what you want to hear. And so what they're telling you is probably more positive than reality. And the reason I bring that up is because you're getting all this positive feedback from the people that are around you, that are closest to you. It could be your employees, it could be your spouse, it could be your friends. And a lot of authors begin to have a much higher set of expectations because of this positive echo chamber that they live in.
No, and I love that, because I think it's all about expectations and the positive echo chamber. One of the things that I'll say, and you'd probably agree, when a client comes to me and they do the same thing, everybody says I should write a book. And I said, well, who's everybody? Great. Okay, so that's basically your friends, neighbors, your circle. How many other successful authors, thought leaders, et cetera, have they worked with in the last 10 years that have gotten the results that they're looking for based on what the advice that they've, nonchalantly given them? Right. And it's not that people have an ill intent, but they don't come from that domain expertise where they understand sort of what it takes. And you might be the most interesting, smartest person in your circle, and your friends might, mean well by telling you to write a book. But just because they do doesn't mean you sort of dive into the pool and without looking if there's water in there.
Yeah, and fame and authority and credibility, it can be very seductive. And once people get a taste of it, they want more and they want more. And their expectations go up, but the package of goods of whom they are and what they have to work with isn't going up too. It's the same bill of goods.
Right.
And so yes, the bill of goods was able to get us a book review in the business section of the Columbus Dispatch. But that same bill of goods isn't necessarily what's going to get you on to CNBC's opening bell, or it's not the same bill of goods that's going to get you interviewed in Forbes. And I think the mistake that people make, and all they do is torture themselves when they make this mistake, is they get a taste of success, expectations rise, but the underlying asset that is needed to drive those expectations isn't rising proportionally. And that's why most authors, most thought leaders that jump into this haphazardly leave the process disappointed.
Right. Well, and they're comparing themselves to folks that have been at the game for 20 years and maybe have written 9 New York Times bestselling books and, spoken hundreds of times around the globe at top level. That's not a fair comparison. That's, a little league are comparing themselves to a New York Yankees pitcher or something, right? Like, what did it take that person to achieve that? Where is my starting point? What's the delta? Can I close that gap quickly? Let me pivot this a little bit as we're only got a couple of minutes here. What are the other things outside of book? Because books are important, books are critical, but they're just one tool in the toolbox. What are the interesting and creative things that you're seeing authors and thought leaders use to scale, leverage, and effectively monetize their content?
Yes. So one of the things that we've had a lot of success with, and my colleague, Rusty Shelton, who's the president and publisher of our ForbesBooks business really well. And Rusty, I give him credit because he really pioneered this a number of years ago, but they use assessment-based marketing very successfully. And our mutual friend, Sally Hogshead, has done a fantastic job with this as well, where you'll take your thought leadership and you'll turn it into, for lack of a better word, a quiz. And this is a quiz that has to be very interesting for the quiz taker. So you're telling them something about themselves or their business that they're really curious to know. And what you do is you go through and you take the quiz, and then immediately after you take that quiz, it will email you results. And typically your results will fall on a grid where you can compare yourself to other people, right? No different than Myers-Briggs or DISC or Colby or anything like that. So we've had a lot of success, Peter, creating assessment-based quizzes or assessments, and then deploying those assessments through social media to that author's clientele, to their email list, and getting people to raise their hand, to engage. And then, of course, the best part about the assessment is when they take the assessment, they tell themselves a whole lot more about themselves to you. If there is an opportunity for you to do business, then they've just opened the kimono and given you really great information that you can tailor to your response to them. We've seen that work very, very well.
I would add to that, Adam. Number one, they're telling you they've opened the kimono and said, look, here's my pain point. So now you know where to focus in terms of what you can do for them. One thing I would caution about assessments is there are assessments and there are assessments, right? So there's the equivalent of the makeup counter, you're a spring and I'm a summer or whatever assessment, meaning it looks good, it's interesting, or a Cosmo type assessment. And then there are validated instruments that are actually calibrated in such a way where it is what they're measuring is actually accurate. And you have to know your audience. If you're going after more of a consumer audience, you don't have to hold yourself to the validated instrument assessment. If you're going after a sophisticated business audience, you have to have that in place. So I think you have to know when to make an investment and where it makes sense to do so. But there are assessments and there are assessments. But we're a big fan of those because you build it once, you deploy it multiple times. There's different levels of assessments. There's sort of the free one that leads someone to take another action. And then there's obviously ones that people pay a lot of money for on a recurring basis at the organizational level. And anything else that you're seeing that's sort of impactful and effective?
Well, I think the big thing for us, and this probably isn't surprising, but very few people do it. And that is, for us, when we build an authority plan for a business leader. This is a 12 to 15 month plan where we're in most cases hitting all of the 7 pillars of authority marketing, which are, branding and omnipresence, content marketing, PR and media, speaking, events, and then lead generation and referral marketing. And what I would say is very often is the case, somebody dives into this content marketing thing and it's literally for them a one-trick pony where they have one tool in the toolbox and they just keep running that same tool. And with the amount of noise that exists today, and with the fact that content is ubiquitous and content is largely free, I believe you've got to have a multi-channel, multi-medium approach to disseminating your expertise. I still find very few people are doing that.
Well, and I think the root cause of that, world according to me, which could be wrong, is everybody's got a preference. So if I am an academic, I write in an academic way, right? I write for academic journals. And that, by the way, that's a nice way of saying sort of it's unreadable to the general market, right? If I'm younger, I might be more comfortable with video. I think the multi-channel approach is critical, and you have to be self-aware of your own sort of preferences to say, wow, that's a little scary. I'm not comfortable with video, or I'm not that comfortable in sort of this short form, or I need 32 minutes to explain something. You've got to be able to switch it up. You got to be able to slice and dice it. You've got to be able to get some help and get people to get you into the different channels. So that's great input. We're getting to closing time here. So give me 2 or 3 little tidbits, nuggets, things I should be pondering if I'm about to dive into this space. So my friends, colleagues, associates, employees have told me I should write a book. I'm relatively smart. I see a path, I think. What should I be doing?
Well, the first thing you should do is take a deep breath. It's harder than you think. That's the first thing that I'll tell you. And it probably seems counterintuitive for me to say that because that doesn't really help my business if I'm the one saying it's harder than you think, because there may be people listening that are like, oh, I was about to do this and now maybe I won't. But if you want to do it right, I mean, you and I have seen plenty of people throw a book together. But if you want to do it right, and if we look at your case studies and my case studies of the authors or thought leaders that have had the most success in terms of building real business opportunity around the book, it's not done thoughtlessly. It's done very carefully and it's done very strategically. The second thing that I would say is for most business people, you have stories, passion, and knowledge, which are very easy for you to recite. But when you sit down and start trying to write, if you sit down with a legal pad and pen, or if you sit down at your computer, when you start to write, you're going to find that it's a whole lot harder. And in most cases, for a business person, finding a competent and capable writing partner who can help you take your content and put it into editorial prose that make up a phenomenal book, you're going to be much better served doing that than trying to do this on your own.
Great point.
Because if you do it on your own, it doesn't mean you won't have success, but it could take 3 or 4 years to do it. Where if you work with a team of people who do this for a living, you can shorten that cycle time to 6 months.
Right. And the odds are, if it's your first, it's better to partner people where it's their 50th or 500th or 5,000th or whatever the case may be. So as we wrap up, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you actually wrote the book literally on authority marketing. So where can people find that book, and how do folks get in touch with you and your team at Forbes and Advantage?
Yeah, so the title of the book is Authority Marketing. You can find it on Amazon.com or anywhere books are sold.
Which is Amazon.com, typically.
That's what everybody knows. Yeah. God bless Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
And our website is ForbesBooks.com, ForbesBooks.com. And for anybody listening, Peter, that wants to reach me directly, my email address is awitty, AWITTY, @advantageww.com.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Lots and lots of great information, lots of insights, lots of things to really think about. If I was out there, I might have to listen to this one 2 or 3 times to scribble down the notes and all the tidbits there. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights, and I'm about to appreciate your book as it's next up on my reading list. So thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Peter.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com.
To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.